'Tis the season for that first snowfall of the year, and within the last week, most of northwest Ohio, southeastern Michigan, and northwest Indiana saw that beautiful first snow of the season. Right on cue, Mother Nature delivered a dose of some wintry weather, and in this week's Climate Friday newsletter, we're going to talk about how unusual this is, and also, is climate change playing a role in that first snow? We'll have the answer coming up. I do want to recap that beautiful first snowfall. Of course, often the case with that first snow of the season. It accumulates on the trees and the grass, but not so much on the roadways. Here was one gorgeous viewer photo from Williams County, a winter wonderland on all of the trees. That first snow, always oh so pretty. And those pine trees picking up a nice little accumulation. This is in Hicksville, Ohio, where that photo was snapped. Also, our photojournalist Cheyenne captured that first snow. This is at Swan Creek Metro Park. And last but not least, what a difference a week makes. Remember how historically warm this November started? Yeah, we were seeing bright sunshine and temperatures in the 70s, and this photo juxtaposes that sun with the snow a week later. Hard to believe that in just 1 week's time, we saw those drastic changes in the weather. Of course, if you do have any snowy photos this winter season, the WTOL 11 weather app is a great place to share those with the weather team. You can search WTOL 11 weather in the App Store as well as the Android store and send us your snowy photos. We love getting those photos on the app as well as via email if you do have any winter wonderland photos. Now this weekend, we saw just a trace of accumulation, and the last week has really been filled with several minor weather disturbances. None of them brought a significant accumulation, but a little light dusting on the grass happened several times this week. So first and foremost, I want to start off by explaining why this accumulates on the grass, perhaps on the fallen leaves, but not typically on the roads. A lot of that has to do with the sun angle of the early season. In fact, we're not actually in winter yet. We are still in the fall season. This time of year, even if you don't see the sun, it is more direct. And what that does, it makes those road temperatures warmer. Also, the roadways are above freezing because they still retain a lot of that heat from the summer and early autumn season. After all of those months of warm weather, what that does is the road temperatures are above freezing, so the early season snow typically melts away a little more quickly. So is this normal to get the first snow? Well, Mother Nature was right on cue this time of year. November 17th is normally when we see that first trace or more of snowfall, and this year it happened on Saturday, November 12th for much of the viewing area. We got that first trace or more of accumulation. Of course, we haven't really had much to measure with that ruler, but still a trace counts for something, right? What about November snow as a whole? This month, we typically average 1.7 inches of snow, which is less than you might think. You may recall growing up, you saw snow a little more often around Thanksgiving time. Well, due to climate change, November snow is going down, and that 1.7 number likely to decline more in the future. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that early season snowfall is often hit or miss. In other words, sometimes we're way above average, sometimes we're way below average. But there is some fluctuation and variability in November snowfall. Let's reminisce on a winter that brought us some unusual early season snow way back in 1966. Some of you watching may have been around northwest Ohio and Toledo area back then. Almost 18 inches of November snow fell that year. Of course, far from the norm. So what is normal for that first 1 inch of snow? We still have yet to see that inch of accumulation. Typically falls around Thanksgiving time on the 28th of November. That is when that first measurable inch of snow accumulates in the Toledo airport. Now, we haven't seen that quite yet, but time will tell if the rest of November brings that. Now, of course, we've seen some extremes on the other end of the spectrum as well. Oftentimes, that first inch or measurable snow doesn't happen until December. Sometimes even close to Christmas. December 21st, that was back in 2012, the latest first snow on recorded history in Toledo. That's hard to believe, waiting all the way until Christmas to get any sort of snowfall on the grass. But you may remember 2012, that was the year we had an exceptionally warm, hot, toasty summer, and that spilled over into the winter season where we saw a very late first accumulation. What about last year? Remember I told you the average November brings about 1.7 inches of snow? We doubled that last November. We got off to a pretty solid start to the winter. November 2021 brought us 3.8 inches of snow. That was above average in the snowfall department, and it seemed like we were on track for a very active, snowy winter. Of course, we got a little pause in December and January, but you recall how it ended with that big snowstorm in February. So how is climate change impacting November and December early season snowfalls? Well, one thing you've likely noticed during your time living around here is it's getting warmer, especially this time of year. This is no surprise, especially this year with how warm we started off the November season. 1.4 degrees in the last decade. That is how much the month of November alone has warmed up. And how does that impact snowfall? Well, if November is warmer than it used to be, oftentimes storm systems that bring moisture to the area may produce rain as opposed to snowfall like you may have seen in the past. Now, if you think this is a big change, just wait till you see the change in temperatures of December. A 3.1 degree increase in December temps, and that has substantially affected the weather that we feel around the holidays and around Christmas time as well. December is growing drier on average, but when we do get storm systems, this significant increase in temperatures does cause some of those to be that wintry mix, and even some rain systems in December growing more commonplace. That good old-fashioned Christmas snow is becoming a little bit more of a thing of the past, in part due to climate change. Of course, the jet stream dictates our weather on a day-to-day basis, but this overall warming trend certainly having an impact on our weather. To recap the biggest impacts of climate change on early season snow, that first snow, it's growing later in the season. As I mentioned, November, we average 1.7 inches of snowfall. That is likely to shrink and become later, pushing towards December. Also, we're seeing lighter snow this time of year as we experience this week. Yes, we did get that first trace of snow, but in terms of 1 inch or more, well, we're going to have to wait on that one. Both November and December, with that warmer and drier trend, snowfall is growing lighter for the early seasons, which means that around Thanksgiving and Christmas, you're going to be seeing snow on the ground a little bit less frequently and perhaps more rain or just dry weather altogether. As we approach the winter weather season, the WTOL 11 weather team will keep you safe and updated, whatever Mother Nature has in store. And to subscribe for next week's Climate Friday newsletter, head over to WTOL.com/email. We've got the very latest coming your way every single Friday.